The city at night is never truly silent. You can hear the hum of air conditioners, the faint buzz of electric wires, the distant clatter of a passing train. People think that getting used to these sounds means they're safe, that nothing strange is happening. But some sounds aren't unheard because they're too far away. They're unheard because you were never supposed to hear them. They slip in when you're most relaxed, quietly seeping into your ears, making you wonder, did I imagine that? Was it the alcohol? Or was someone really calling my name? Tonight's story is about one of those sounds. A voice that keeps calling the same name, over and over again. Her name was Mina, 23 years old, recently graduated, and about to start her first real job. On the surface, she was like any other young woman beginning life in the city, hopeful, nervous, full of quiet expectations. But unlike most people her age, she longed for solitude more than excitement. After finishing college, Mina finally achieved what she had dreamed of for years. She got a job at a television station. Her parents were proud, and her friends congratulated her, but Mina felt something else stirring inside her, the urge to live on her own. She had always stayed at home, commuting between school and her family's house. The thought of continuing that same routine, work, marriage, family, made her feel trapped. So she told her parents that she wanted to move out, to live alone and see who she could become. Her father hesitated, worried that she wasn't ready, but eventually agreed. A friend of the family helped her look for an apartment. After visiting several places, they found one that seemed perfect, a small, two-story complex in a quiet residential area, lined with tall cherry and zelkova trees. In spring, the petals would scatter like snow. In summer, the leaves would block the sun. It felt peaceful, safe, and ordinary. The building itself sat slightly higher than the street, surrounded by a low concrete wall. From the road, passers-by could see the windows but not into them, because the glass was frosted and the elevation kept the rooms private. Mina loved it. It felt secure without being isolated. There was an automatic door lock at the entrance that required a key card to enter, another small comfort for a young woman living alone. When she stepped inside for the first time, she felt a rush of excitement. The apartment was tiny but bright, with clean tatama floors, a small kitchen, and enough space for a bookshelf, a table, and her favorite kotatsu, a low-heated table she had brought from her parents' home. Over the next few days, she visited furniture stores, choosing everything herself: a new sofa, curtains, a rug, even a few framed prints to hang on the wall. Every detail reflected her taste. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her parents helped her move in early that spring. The air was still cool at night, and a faint chill lingered in the breeze. As they left, her mother reminded her to lock the door and not to stay up too late watching TV. Mina laughed, waving goodbye from the doorway. When the sound of their footsteps faded, she stood alone in her new home, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. It was the first time in her life that she had ever been completely alone. That first night after joining the company, Mina had told herself she'd unpack a little, lay out her bedding, and get an early night. But when she finally came home from the welcome dinner, the alcohol was still warm in her cheeks, her body heavy, her thoughts slow. The air was cold, and she didn't feel like moving anymore. In the corner of the room sat her old kotatsu, the heated table she had brought from her parents' house. She knelt on the tatame and slipped her legs beneath the blanket. The warmth spread instantly, wrapping her feet like a small wave of comfort. Just for a few minutes, she thought, resting her head on her folded arms. Within moments, she drifted into sleep. She didn't know how long she had slept when a faint voice reached her ears.
Yui. Yui.
It wasn't loud, but it was clear, soft, almost careful. In the stillness of the night, the sound cut through like a thread of cold air. Mina stirred, half awake, her eyes barely open.
Yui. Yui.
She wondered sleepily, who could it be? For a moment, she just sat there listening. Maybe someone outside was walking their dog. People in the city liked to give their pets human names. Or maybe it was just a couple passing by, talking softly. In any case, it had nothing to do with her. She sighed, pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders, and let the warmth take her back to sleep. The next morning came bright and early. Mina hurried through breakfast, anxious not to be late for work. The day turned out to be busier than she expected, endless tasks, introductions, and instructions from her new team. By the time evening came, her legs ached and her head was spinning. Just as she was about to head home, a few senior colleagues invited her to join a welcome get-together. She didn't really want to go, she was tired and just wanted a quiet night, but it felt awkward to refuse on her first week. So she smiled, nodded, and went along. They laughed, clinked glasses, and swapped stories about their first jobs. The air was warm with the smell of grilled food and the faint hum of chatter from other tables. Everyone spoke over each other, trading jokes, teasing new hires, complaining about long hours. Mina smiled and laughed when they did, though half the time she didn't catch what was so funny. The beer was cold, the lights were soft, and for a little while, it felt like she was part of something, even if she didn't quite belong yet. It was late by the time she finally made her way home. Her face was flushed, her head light from alcohol. She kicked off her shoes, left her coat on the sofa, and once again crawled under the kotatsu. The warmth rose slowly around her, easing the tension from her limbs. Within minutes, she was gone. Sometime in the middle of the night, she heard it again.
Yui. Yui.
The same voice, the same rhythm, as if the previous night were repeating itself. Mina frowned in her sleep, her thoughts clouded by fatigue and alcohol. That again must be the same person walking their dog, she told herself. But something felt different. The sound wasn't echoing through the street like before. It was closer, clearer, as though the voice was moving toward her building.
Yui. Yui.
It came again, hoarse and slow, carrying the faint rasp of an older woman's tone. The voice didn't drift from side to side. It stayed fixed, each call slightly louder, inching closer with every repetition. Mina's eyes opened. Her room was dim, only the faint glow of streetlights seeping through the frosted glass. She held her breath, trying to listen. The voice was no longer distant. It was right outside the building, coming up the narrow path that led to her apartment.
Yui. Yui.
Her pulse quickened. Maybe someone's looking for their neighbor, she thought. It's not me. It can't be me. But the voice didn't fade away. Instead, it stopped, right outside her window. Mina's gaze turned toward the window. The frosted glass glowed faintly with reflected streetlight, and there, in the center of it, was a shadow. A person's upper body pressed against the window from outside. One hand rested on the frame, the head slightly bent forward as though peering in. The figure didn't move. Through the glass she could see only the blur of long, tangled hair hanging past the shoulders. No face, just the outline of someone standing far too close. Then, almost tenderly, the voice murmured,
Yui. I hate you.
Mina's heart stopped for a beat. Her first thought was that someone was watching her, a stranger, a stalker, some drunk who had climbed up from the street. But that was impossible. The apartment sat above ground level. There was nowhere to stand outside that window. Still, fear and disgust flooded her. She ducked under the kotatsu blanket, clutching it tightly around her. Inside, it was dark and warm again. She told herself to stay still, to wait until whoever it was went away. Her breathing slowed. The warmth numbed her fear. Slowly, her eyes grew heavy. It's over, she thought. It was just a dream. But just as she began to drift off, another voice came, soft, low, and this time not from outside. It came from inside the room, right beside her.
Yui, what are we doing tomorrow?
It wasn't loud, yet every syllable felt sharp and deliberate, as if the speaker were right beside her. The warmth from the kotatsu faded in an instant. Her body stiffened, her breath caught in her throat. The voice couldn't have come from outside. The windows were locked. The door was sealed. She was alone, absolutely alone. But the whisper didn't stop. It lingered, soft, rhythmic, like someone reciting words from memory. A faint noise stirred beneath the tatami, slow, dragging, like fabric sliding across wood. At first, Mina thought it was a rat. Then she realized it was moving toward her. The sound crept closer, stopping just beneath the heated table. Her heartbeat pounded. The warmth in the room vanished, replaced by a freezing weight in the air. Then came a soft exhale behind her neck, real close. She froze. The cold pressed gently against her back, like a hand resting through the blanket. And then, right beside her ear, a whisper.
Yui, what are we doing tomorrow?
The smell of burnt wood filled the air. Mina gripped the table edge, trembling, praying for it to stop. But the voice kept breathing, steady, looping closer each time. The air turned so cold she could barely breathe. Darkness swept over her. When she woke, she hadn't moved. The blanket was heavy, pressing down on her back. Something was kneeling over her, silent, breathing. The same voice whispered again, slow and tender.
Yui, what are we doing tomorrow?
Her body refused to move. The blanket tightened, her breath catching in short bursts. And then the voice leaned close, almost sighing.
You can do whatever you want, but I'm not leaving.
When she opened her eyes again, the room was bright with morning light. The frosted window glowed faintly, scattering soft shadows across the tatami. For a few seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then the memory crashed over her, the whisper, the breath, the voice inside the room. Her whole body broke into a cold sweat. She sat up too fast, gasping. Her clothes were damp, her skin freezing. Everything looked normal, the kotatsu, the furniture, the pale light of dawn, but the air felt wrong. It was too quiet. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. Without thinking, she grabbed her bag, slipped on her shoes, and ran. She didn't stop to lock the door. She didn't even check if she was fully dressed. She just ran until the train station came into view. The first train was arriving, its brakes shrieking in the cold morning air. She climbed aboard, collapsed into a corner seat, and stared at her reflection in the glass. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and hollow. When she reached her parents' home, she burst through the door and clung to her mother, crying so hard she couldn't form words. Between sobs, she told them everything, the voice calling Yui, the shadow in the window, the whisper that had come from under the floor. Her parents listened, horrified but silent. They didn't know what to say. That night, she refused to be alone, following her mother from room to room until exhaustion finally dragged her into sleep. A few days later, her parents' friend decided to investigate. He went to the neighborhood where Mina had rented the apartment. The area was quiet, lined with tall cherry and zelkova trees. The building looked perfectly ordinary, a two-story complex with gray walls and a low concrete fence. Nothing about it suggested danger or tragedy. He stopped at a small local bar nearby, one of those places where older residents gathered every evening. After a few drinks, he mentioned the apartment casually. An elderly man sitting at the counter turned his head sharply. "Ah, that place," he said. "I remember it. It used to be a small wooden house, before the fire." The man took a slow sip of his drink, his voice dropping. "The fire happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Big one. You could see the flames all the way from the station. The couple who lived there, an old man and his wife, they didn't make it out. Couldn't move fast enough. Burned alive before help came. After that, they tore the place down and built those new apartments. But people don't stay there long. They move out after a few months. Say they hear voices at night, or feel someone calling them through the window." He asked if anyone named Yui had lived there. The man shook his head. "No, never. Those two didn't have children. No relatives either. I've lived here 40 years, never heard that name." No one could explain who or what was calling that name, or why it had chosen Mina. But every person he spoke to agreed. After the fire, strange things happened there. Lights flickered in empty rooms. Curtains moved when there was no wind. And sometimes, late at night, someone called softly from outside, repeating the same name over and over. Since that day, Mina has never lived alone again. Even now, years later, whenever she hears a woman's voice outside at night, she feels her chest tighten and her hands go cold. She tells herself it's nothing, just a passerby, or the wind, or her imagination. But deep down, she knows that some voices don't stop when you leave. They follow you quietly, patiently, waiting for you to listen again. Some stories don't end when the telling is over. They stay behind, quiet, invisible, waiting for the right night to start again. Maybe it's just an echo trapped in the walls. Maybe it's a memory that refuses to fade. But if you ever wake in the dark and hear a voice whispering a name that isn't yours, don't answer. Because once it knows you're listening, it might never stop calling.